You just saw a McDonald's commercial for a certain green ogre's glassware, and you rush to buy the whole set. They've been with you through thick and thin. College, your first love, your first job. Every time you drink from it, it brings you joy. It riles up memories and nostalgia. Then, one day your friend comes over and looks shocked when he sees the collection. You think it must be worth something, but no. He tells you that your beloved cups may have been poisoning you for more than a decade. Everybody has a cup they love, like this mug right here. Out of all my mugs, this is my favorite.
This does not compute. It appears to be just as unremarkable as the rest of your extremely conventional Pantone P179-3C gray mugs. Why have you stated this mug to be significant?
Because this is the one with coffee in it.
You believe you are humorous, don't you?
For me, it's this beautiful limited edition Yeet cup.
Well, for some of you, your favorite cup might be a collectible from the Golden Arches. McDonald's had been bringing joy with decorative glasses for decades, even as far back as the 70s, with cartons, McDonald's characters, and promotional IPs on the delightful liquid vessels. Shrek was no exception. In 2007, McDonald's teamed up with DreamWorks to promote Shrek the Third, which made $813.4 million worldwide. They promoted a new chicken sandwich, they introduced Shrek Happy Meals with talking toys, and they created a Shrek the Third line of glasses. They were loving it so much that when the fourth movie, Shrek Ever After, came out in 2010, McDonald's had a Shrekstravaganza. They had a new Donkeylicious green menu, a Fiona-tastic Happy Meal, and people were so ogre-joyed with the first Shrek glasses that they brought them back for a second time.
Please convey that you won't drown us with an overabundance of abysmal Shrek puns.
You mean swamp you with an ogre abundance of wonderful Shrek wordplay?
You are an embarrassment to the human race.
For only $2.49 or $1.99 with food, you could take home a glass with Shrek, Donkey, Puss in Boots, or Fiona. On one side of the glass, they were happy, smiling, even overjoyed. But if you spun them around, they showed a more sinister side. Perhaps appropriate, because there was something evil inside. A wolf dressed in grandma's clothing. Jennifer Taggart, a mother of two, bought some of these glasses for her 7-year-old son. As an environmental lawyer and former environmental engineer, Jennifer blogged and authored a book about the dangers of toxic chemicals in the home. So, like any fairy godmother would do, she took out her wand, which in this case was a Thermo Fisher Scientific Niton XRF analyzer, and placed it against the glass to test its chemical composition. She looked at the display, and her face turned snow white. Have your breath always smell like tuna and onions? No.
What?
Use sandpaper as toilet paper? Ugh.
What are you doing?
Oh, I'm picking my poison. Pick Your Poison, the sponsor for today's video. It is the party card game. Here, would you rather go to jail for 10 years for a crime you didn't commit, or get attacked by a shark?
Oh, get attacked by a shark, duh. I'd fight it off with my awesome grill food. At worst, I'd lose an arm, but then I'd get one of those cool robotic ones that would punch through walls.
For me, jail.
Seriously? For 10 years?
You underestimate my fear of the ocean. Play Pick Your Poison with 3 to 10 friends and hear them squirm to justify their wild choices. Challenge your friends with tough Would You Rather questions by throwing down 2 equally impossible scenarios. Then, secretly vote, but be careful, if you're not with the majority, you'll be left in the dust, and your friends may look at you funny.
Oh, this sounds perfect for us. Okay, here. Would you rather always feel like you need to sneeze but you can't, or have your cell phone only be able to charge up to 10%? Oh. So looks like everyone chose cell phone up to 10%, except one.
I do not possess the ability to feel like sneezing, and my smart device is required for digital parkouring on top of subway cars.
With endless combinations, Pick Your Poison is great for seeing your friends in a whole new light. Click on the link in the description box below to pick up a copy so you can bring big decisions and even bigger laughs to any gathering. Plus, it helps out our channel. As for Jennifer Taggart, our mother of two, she didn't get to pick her poison. Her XRF reader revealed something truly shocking. Cadmium.
Cadmium? Sounds like what's inside Wolverine.
No, cadmium. It's a soft silver-white heavy metal.
Heavy metal? Like our band? The Circuit Freaks? 1, 2, 3, 4!
In the depths of my abyss, a sword kiss steel, brewing the darkness, threatening acceptance to make what feel.
Less rock and roll, more rock and ore. Heavy metal usually means it's either one of the more dense metals or has a higher atomic number. A few heavy metals are considered extremely toxic, like lead, mercury, and cadmium. They're like a heavy metal band of their own, and they even made it into the top 10 chemicals of major public health concerns according to the World Health Organization, alongside other wonderful toxic hits like asbestos, arsenic, and pesticides. It's dangerous when you inhale or ingest cadmium because it can cause kidney disease, lung damage, and fragile bones. Children are believed to be more susceptible to its effects. Worst of all, it's a Group 1 carcinogen, which basically means it can cause cancer. However, despite this, cadmium is used in quite a few applications, as a woman unfortunately discovered in 1989. She was suffering from a huge list of symptoms that had slowly developed over the past 3 years, including bloody diarrhea, inflamed kidneys, bone pain, difficulty breathing, constant fatigue, and pus-infected gums. Medical professionals worked tirelessly to find the source of her ailments, only to come up empty-handed. It was only when she was admitted to the Department of Forensic Medicine for a toxicological examination that they struck gold. Gold teeth, to be specific. As it turned out, about 5 years prior, the woman had received a row of gold teeth. Well, all that glittered was not gold. It was in fact a deadly cocktail with a striking amount of cadmium, 2.98% by weight, when it shouldn't exceed 0.018%, which would have been enough to be fatal if they hadn't uncovered the toxin, but luckily they did, and after the removal, she recovered from all of her symptoms. I know you're nearly invincible, buddy, but maybe get that gold tooth checked. A 2022 study showed that cadmium is even toxic to tardigrades.
Why was there so much cadmium in her teeth, though?
The study doesn't say that specifically, but cadmium is used in metal alloys to help harden them and lower their melting point. It's also used in a variety of everyday applications, like batteries, stabilizers for plastics, and color pigments, such as the yellow of a gold tooth.
Or like the paint on a McDonald's cup?
Exactly. When the US started to heavily regulate lead paint in children's products in 2008, factories switched to cadmium because it can create the same warm colors from bright yellows to fire truck reds.
Jeez, from one deadly metal to another. It's all those Chinese factories cutting costs.
Actually, these weren't manufactured in an overseas country, as some might suspect, but rather in the United States by a French company called Arc International. They said in a statement that their products meet the highest standards of quality and safety. According to manufacturers, they don't have any viable alternatives, as it's difficult to get those bold pigments from anything else. That's why when Jennifer checked the Shrek glasses with her XRF spectrometer, the cadmium levels were highest on the yellow of the Shrek glass at 1,946 parts per million, and the orange fur of Puss in Boots at 1,707 parts per million. For context, federal acceptable maximum for toys was 75 parts per million.
And the glasses aren't considered toys then?
Exactly. Products sold to children didn't fall under the same scrutiny as toys, and we know that kids will lick anything. And adults too, apparently.
What? I like the tongue feel.
Jennifer immediately contacted the Consumer Product Safety Commission with her findings. Around the same time, an anonymous man from Massachusetts, whom Jennifer had exchanged emails with, sent the CPSC the same glasses for analysis at the request of the Californian Democrat Jackie Speer. That's because the US representative was already trying to put regulations in place for heavy metals in jewelry sold to children, prompted from a recent recall of Miley Cyrus necklaces from Walmart, which also contained cadmium.
Jeez, parents overreact a bit, no? Just tell your kids not to lick your necklaces and glasses. The paint was only on the outside, right? What's the harm?
Well, I'm sure it's hard to control what children do every second of the day, but the main concern was if a child, or even an adult, grabbed the glass to drink and then a French fry, small amounts of cadmium could wipe off the cup onto their fingers and be ingested. It was a significant concern because 9 million McDonald's Shrek glasses had made it into people's homes, with 3 million waiting to be sold. Needless to say, the CPSC had to test faster than a growing beanstalk to see if the amount of ingested cadmium was at a safe level before something happened.
Safe level? Ain't any amount of cadmium bad? Oh, I'd like a side of poison with my food, please.
As the 16th century Swiss-German physician Paracelsus once said, it is only the dose which makes a thing poison. Everything can be toxic in excessive amounts, even water, like in a previous video of ours where a woman died of water intoxication. But it's important to note that there's a difference between acute toxicity and chronic toxicity. Acute toxicity is like the poison apple. It has immediate effects. For this clarification, cadmium is only considered moderately toxic. Heck, caffeine is more acutely toxic. But then there's chronic toxicity, which is when something builds up in your body over time. For example, cyanide is very acutely toxic, but it doesn't build up in your system with lower doses. Lead, on the other hand, is very chronically toxic because it builds up in your body, which then harms you over time. But even that needs a bit of nuance. Chronic toxicity levels don't indicate a lethal dose. They only indicate adverse health effects, which change depending on the substance. For example, caffeine is more chronically toxic than lead.
That's what I keep telling you. You gotta cut back on that stuff.
Yeet has more caffeine than a cup of coffee, plus a lot of other stuff.
What? It does?
But before you start freaking out, the adverse effects of caffeine on your heart rate, mood, and sleeping, which I've definitely never experienced,
You abstain from sleep entirely.
are less dangerous than the effects of lead. Low red blood cells, kidney disease, immune system impairment, and adverse effects on brain development in children, just to list a few.
What are the consequences if lead happens to infiltrate your coffee? Asking for a friend.
Oh, there's already lead in my coffee. Even cadmium.
I deny any involvement in the matter.
What about my precious yeet?
Oh, there's definitely heavy metal in energy drinks. That's because cadmium and other toxic metals come from the ground and naturally make their way into our drinking water and food, but it's usually in very low doses. This is why the dose makes the poison is an important principle of toxicology. Luckily, a few organs like the liver and kidneys produce a protein called metallothionein. This protein is special because it acts like a sponge and soaks up heavy metals like cadmium, locking them in so they can't interact with cells, and storing them away until they leave the body. However, too much cadmium at once will overload the detoxification capacity of metallothionein, causing the metal to remain toxic, and then it stays in your body for years, building up. The chronic toxicity, or the acceptable intake for cadmium, is 0.1 micrograms per kilogram of body weight per day. That would be about 8 micrograms a day for an average adult of 80 kilograms. But keep in mind that your body absorbs more cadmium if you don't have enough iron or nutrients, as a farming village in Japan learned the hard way. Around 1912, in the Toyama Prefecture, one of the 47 divisions of Japan, just downstream of Jinzu River, some of the population started exhibiting severe pain in their spine and joints. It mostly targeted women with pain all over their bodies. Sometimes they would be doing menial things, and they would suddenly break a bone. Some died from pneumonia and kidney disease. They didn't know what was causing it at the time, but they called it the itai-itai disease, which basically means the ouch-ouch disease. It was believed to be a microbial disease that only affected farmers of those villages, and as a result, it was largely ignored. Around 4 decades later, a local doctor finally started to research it. He turned his attention to a mine 19 miles upstream. Cadmium was discarded as waste into the river water, which the farmers drank from, irrigated their rice fields with, caught their fish in, and used for a multitude of other things. They mainly relied on rice in their diet, and so, due to lack of proper nutrition, their bodies were absorbing the cadmium in the rice in excessive amounts. In 1971, Mitsui Mining and Smelting Company was sued and found guilty and ended up paying for the survivors' medical bills. Then, in 1979, a long-term project to replace all of the farming soil in the Jinzu Basin, costing a total of 40.7 billion yen, was finally completed 33 years later in 2012. Even though it's been more than a century, the river is still polluted with cadmium, but better knowledge, nutrition, and treatments have helped lower the cases of itai-itai disease. This is why organizations are created to help regulate and educate people of potential health risks, like the United States CPSC. And when they finally received the Shrek glasses for analysis at 5 p.m. on Thursday, May 27th, they went to work. To mimic human touch, they wiped the painted design of each glass 30 times with 3 moist towelettes. Then, they analyzed the towelettes for not just cadmium, but also lead, mercury, barium, and other elements deemed hazardous. After 2 days, working into Memorial Day weekend, they finally had the results. Fortunately, the other elements didn't show up, but as expected, cadmium did. And the worst villain of them all, our lovable furry orange cat. The moist towelettes that were wiped on Puss in Boots had 26 times more cadmium than the acceptable daily intake for a 6-year-old. With those findings, they determined that if half the rubbed off cadmium was ingested, an average 6-year-old weighing about 20 kilograms, touching the glass 8 times a day, would reach the maximum acceptable daily intake. On the other hand, the Fiona glass, the Donkey glass, and the Shrek glass were deemed to have some cadmium, but not at dangerous levels, according to their guidelines. But it's not just these McDonald's glasses that were problematic. High levels of both cadmium and lead were found on a 1977 McDonald's Grimace glass, and on a 1978 McDonald's Garfield glass. It seems Puss in Boots wasn't the only orange cat to fear. In fact, painted cups in general are a problem, like vintage Coca-Cola glasses, old collectible jars, even frozen mugs from 2014. If you have one of these cups, maybe you should let it go.
No, you know what that malware of a melody does to my circuitry. The mere mention of it compromises my RAM.
There are many painted cups that are at risk, and poisonings from cups have happened before.
Well, now they know. Let it go, 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 go.
What's up with him?
I think he's frozen. One of these poisonings happened in 1972, when a 53-year-old man walked into a hospital holding his chest, complaining of pain. He was very sluggish and was suffering from constipation. They ran him through a battery of tests, all coming back negative, except for one. He was anemic, which means he had low red blood cells. When they placed a sample of his blood under a microscope, it looked messy. He had what's called basophilic stippling, which basically means that there were a lot of blue specks in his red blood cells. Those specks are leftover building blocks to make new red blood cells. A bit of specks is fine, but a lot means there's a problem, and points to one thing, which his blood work confirmed. His blood lead concentration was 3 times a normal reading. He had lead poisoning. They questioned him to try and find the source, but they couldn't figure it out. Despite not having symptoms themselves, they tested his wife and 12-year-old son in search of answers. The son was fine, but the wife had high levels of lead in her blood as well. That's when it clicked for the man, and he rushed home to return with a set of cocktail glasses. He explained that the normally glossy black inside had changed to a dull gray when he had started putting them in the dishwasher instead of washing them by hand. It seems their frequent nightcaps might have been giving them more than just a buzz. The coating came off easily when the inside was rubbed, and when the flakes were analyzed, as suspected, it was 65% lead sulfide by weight. Luckily, the man and his wife were treated and recovered. This was the fear with the McDonald's glasses, that it would only be a matter of time before someone would suffer from cadmium poisoning, and it could cause health problems, even death. Despite this, the CPSC determined the risk was low, and an independent third-party lab also determined the same. However, it's debatable, as they only tested the solubility of cadmium on brand new glasses, not ones that have been used, washed over and over, or gone through the dishwasher. Regardless, the CPSC consulted McDonald's, and the final decision was to recall the glasses and pull all advertisements for the promotion. McDonald's offered $3 for any glass returned, more than what the customers bought them for. In total, including both the United States and Canada, 13.4 million glasses were subject to recall. While it would have cost McDonald's $15 million in refunds if all the cups had been returned, there aren't any reports on how many were actually returned. There may still be millions who have these glasses today, like a Reddit user who was 16 at the time and didn't hear about the recall. He said there was no sentimental value for his Shrek glasses and he found them ugly, yet he had been ironically drinking from one of them for over a decade. To make matters worse, he had been washing them in the dishwasher regularly. He only found out about how toxic the glasses were in 2022, when a visiting bandmate saw the glasses and told him about the recall. There doesn't seem to be any reportings of adverse health effects caused by the McDonald's glasses, but to prevent anything from happening in the future, Jackie Spear changed her bill from regulating heavy metal in children's jewelry to all heavy metal in all children's products. Unfortunately, it never passed the committee stage, and there's no current legislation today, except for toys. However, at the very least, there are standard levels in the United States for other things like food, water, and workplace exposure. Even the European Chemicals Agency proposed a ban on all cadmium pigments in Europe in 2014, but it never went through due to protests from artists and printmakers. They were worried about the limited color palette without cadmium. However, currently, there are new options coming out that could replace cadmium paints, assuming they become widely available and commercially viable. It's impossible to avoid heavy metals entering your body, but the more you can do to limit your exposure, the better. Be especially careful with old tableware that you drink or eat from. According to Tamara Rubin, a lead poisoning advocate who runs the website Lead Safe Mama, I can almost guarantee you that if you have a vintage glass with exterior painted decoration that feels three-dimensional, rough or slightly raised from the glass, most likely that is lead paint. When it comes to safe vintage glassware, Tamara says to look for something unpainted or with a solid color. Also avoid bright colors like yellows, oranges, and reds.
I'm gonna miss you, buddy.
It seems your mediocre off-white mugs meet safety standards, much like your equally mediocre life.
You mean mediocre?
Disconnect me from my power source. please.
If you have tableware that you suspect may have toxic metals, and you only use it occasionally, like for a holiday, you might be okay. But use your judgment and be cautious. Check that the paint doesn't look worn out, don't leave liquids in them for too long, and avoid using them to hold hot beverages, alcohol, or anything acidic. Also, try not to drink from glassware where the paint is close to the rim. And most importantly, don't put these items in the dishwasher, as the paint might erode, and even expose other tableware to the toxic metals.
You hear that, buddy? You can stay!
Well, drink safe out there. And if you enjoyed this video, consider helping us make more by hitting the subscribe button. You'd be surprised to know just how much your one sub helps us. Also, be sure to check out our last video about how a strange energy drink melted right through a man's jaw down to his skull. And don't forget, pick your poison, the fun Would You Rather card game. Click the link to get yours now.
All right. Hit it, boys.
Let it go. Let it go.